The French Riviera, a narrow stretch of land on the Mediterranean between Monaco and Saint-Tropez. A landscape spoiled by the sun and richly endowed with the memories of glamorous times. For over 100 years, this coast has been synonymous with luxury and decadence, stars and starlets, and a very special attitude to life. The Côte d'Azur is the scene of dramas and affairs that have shaped its reputation to this day. Every year they come back, familiar faces with even more familiar names. A get-together of the rich, famous and beautiful, amidst a glamorous and breathtakingly beautiful backdrop. The coast owes its name to the French philosopher Stéphane Liégeard. At the end of the 19th century, he was fascinated by the unique blue of the sea and christened this stretch of land La Côte d'Azur, the Blue Coast. To this day, the beaches bask in the glow of the history of this landscape with its unique flair. Between Cannes and Nice, at the southern tip of the Cap d'Antibes, lies a place that helped create the myth of the Côte d'Azur. A mélange of seduction, lightness and elegance. The Hotel du Cap Eden Rock. History has been made here for 150 years. Whether artists, the rich or stars, their paths and their stories cross in this place. A German couple in love sailed along the Cap d'Antibes in 1964. The industrial magnate Rudolf August Oetker and his young wife Maja. This sailing trip changed her life.
We hadn't been married long, and for me it wasn't the best holiday because I was always sick. And then we passed by the coast and he said to me, "Look up there, that's a very nice hotel. But it's much too expensive for us."
They gave up the overnight stay, but 5 years later they bought the whole hotel. They were simply taken with the seductive flair of the Côte d'Azur.
It's an attitude to life. A lifestyle that, in contrast to us Germans, who are perhaps more rigid and disciplined, is a wonderful contrast.
A life full of pleasure and ease, with great elegance in many places. Always a rock in the surf of fast-moving fashions, the Hotel du Cap. A meeting here is a must in the annual calendar of the global jet set, and has been for decades. Its guests are artists, statesmen, and film stars. People have loved, lived, created, and dined here for 150 years. The hotel is the big stage, a perfect place for leisure, or a discreet hideaway. Madame Blazek-Célin is the granddaughter of Antoine Célat, the former owner of the hotel, who provided a glamorous setting for life on the Côte d'Azur. A man from the simplest of backgrounds.
My grandfather came from a peasant family in the north of Italy, from a tiny village. They were 6 children, very, very poor. But he wanted to become a hotelier. So he did, like many Italians of that time, he went to the Côte d'Azur to work there. The Cap d'Antibes was a rough place then. Nobody came here. It was too windy, too humid.
Nevertheless, Antoine Célat found work here, at the Grand Hôtel du Cap. A little later, he bought the hotel and turned it into a flourishing luxury hostel.
It started with the Russians. The whole Tsar family came to the Côte d'Azur. It was extraordinary, their jewelry, their festivities, their way of life.
Golden times were dawning thanks to the Russian and also English aristocrats. It was the time of strict etiquette. The sea was only a backdrop. It was considered dirty and unhealthy. The season began in October and ended in May. People didn't go on holiday, they hibernated. The rich Russian elite in particular swapped the wet and cold weather at home for the pleasant climate of the Côte d'Azur.
They came so often that they left their things in big suitcases. They were then stored in the attic. I remember when I was a little girl, my father showed me these big suitcases. Inside was a fabulous wardrobe with pearls, jewels, tiaras. It went on like that for years. They came back the next year and found all their belongings again.
While dark clouds gathered in the rest of Europe and the First World War broke out in July 1914, Antoine Célat had a huge saltwater pool hewn out of the rock. An extravagant luxury back then, a pool was a rarity. The Côte d'Azur simply hid the horrors of the Great War, but finally it also reached the splendid world of the French Riviera. American nurses were now recovering at the Hôtel du Cap. When the war was over, everyone hoped that the old glamour would return, but the wealthy guests stayed away.
The Russian Revolution had broken out, and they had all been killed, all of them. My father was left with the suitcases. They had incredible value. He waited for 10 years, as was required by the law. And after no one came, he donated them to the Red Cross, which distributed all the wealth.
Now other guests were arriving, young, rich Americans, heirs and intellectuals. They were discovering the Blue Coast for themselves.
They were physically beautiful, they were sexually somewhat liberated. I think there were obviously a lot of affairs going on. They dressed in a flamboyant way. It was a new public, modern way of living.
Lots of naked skin. The free spirit reigned. One couple in particular stood out, Gerald and Sarah Murphy. She was a rich heiress, he was an artist. In the spring of 1923, they rented a room at the Hôtel du Cap for a few months. And they dared to do something unprecedented. They spent their days on the beach.
I think they were unlike anything that had been seen in France before. They lived a wonderful life. They had cocktails in the evenings, they had wonderful friends, they had fantastic clothes and didn't hesitate to dress up in beautiful outfits. And Sarah Murphy, she would wear her woolly bathing suit, but she had a beautiful long strand of pearls rolling down her back, and she would wear that out on the beach and sunbathe in it.
The Murphys held imaginative fancy dress parties. With them, Rudolfo Valentino, Picasso, and Coco Chanel. The young fashion designer created the matching clothes, beach pajamas.
This became such a fashion that there was a new title given to the whole area. It was Pijamapolis, because everyone started wearing these pajama pants, all over, and men and women, and all over the area.
When the season ended in May, the Murphys managed to keep the Hotel du Cap open. Their parties on the beach continued. And so the first summer season on the Côte d'Azur began. The French Riviera has always been the scene of great amours and secret affairs. It offers discretion and tolerance. Romantic places abound, luxurious yachts, and sophisticated hotels. In the 1930s, a couple stayed at the Hotel du Cap that was not supposed to exist, but here they were undisturbed.
I was 6 years old when I was taught to curtsy to the Duke of Windsor and Mrs. Windsor. My father used to pick them up at the station.
For years, the English king had been coming to the Côte d'Azur with his divorced and remarried mistress, Wallis Simpson. Here he lived out his affair without a care in the world. Meanwhile, the pressure was mounting in England. Throne or love? The king had to decide. Edward made his choice for Wallis and abdicated. When he told his lover, she shouted angrily, "You goddamn fool." The only option left for the two was to take the bull by the horns. Wallis had been divorced in the meantime. At the Château de Condé, the ex-king and the now twice-divorced American married in June 1937, with only a handful of guests. Not a single member of Edward's family came. The English royal family distanced itself from this scandal, and now avoided the Côte d'Azur with its loose customs. Edward and Wallis now held court at the Château de la Croix on the Cap d'Antibes. Despite a love match and a life of luxury, Edward was never really happy. He searched for his new role and found only the social parquet. But this was enabled by this couple. At parties, people basked in the glamour of the once highest English aristocrat and his dazzling wife. Luxurious villas line the coast. Many bear famous names. Villa Chaplin or Villa Efrosi-Rothschild. Even their builders enjoyed the seductive flair that is in the air here. In the summer of 1938, the American ambassador in London, Joseph Kennedy, spent his holidays with his wife and children at the rock pool of the Hotel du Cap. It wasn't only the azure sea that showed its charms. Marlene Dietrich also draped her world-famous legs on a deck chair. In full view of everyone, the film diva retreated with Joseph Kennedy to one of the cabanes, one of the beach huts.
That was quite scandalous. And Marlène also had an affair, a simultaneous affair with a very famous American heiress who was called Jo Carstairs. And Jo Carstairs was a wealthy woman who'd been around the Riviera for several years. She was a speedboat champion. And she was also a very well-known lesbian, although she never admitted it. And they had quite an affair.
It was the many affairs like this that made the Côte d'Azur the place where everything seemed allowed. Joseph Kennedy showed himself to be tolerant. He got Marlene Dietrich a ship ticket to the USA so that she could reach safety in time. For another war was on the horizon, and the carefree life on the French Riviera came to a standstill. Most foreigners wanted to leave the country. The coast was largely spared from the war. No sooner had the Second World War ended than 350,000 US Army soldiers came to the Côte d'Azur to recuperate before going home. They took the experience of the easygoing life home with them. And the paradise in the south of France was now becoming even better known in America. Soon Antibes, with its picturesque fortifications, came into the public eye. The city was home to an exceptional artist. In 1946, Pablo Picasso moved to the coastal town, to his beloved sea. He literally absorbed the air, the warmth, and the light. The Spaniard spent the war years in Paris. On the Côte d'Azur, his spirits revived.
That was right after the war. This stay here was to change a lot in Picasso's work, also because he was with a young woman. You can see that in his paintings, with much lighter colours and with Mediterranean themes, also a bit mythological.
The woman at his side was the painter Françoise Gillot, 40 years his junior. The couple had 2 children. The fact that Picasso was still married to someone else didn't bother anyone here. With Gillot at his side and the freedoms on the Côte d'Azur, Picasso's creative energy experienced new heights. The Grimaldi Castle became the artist's studio, directly above the sea.
Picasso was someone who loved nature and liked to express himself physically. Here he could walk around bare-chested and wearing sandals, and he liked that a lot. He was far away from Parisian life and from everything that surrounds a famous artist, from the art dealers and all the people who swarmed around him there.
Picasso enjoyed the simple life and discovered ceramics. It became part of his art. Whether for pottery or bullfighting, Picasso was enthusiastic about everything. And everyone was enthusiastic about him. He was in the limelight everywhere. Picasso loved a grand appearance, and the festivals on the Côte d'Azur provided him with the stage. Here, the painter became a star and the most famous artist in the world.
This was the moment when the Côte d'Azur became what it is today. Now the famous came. It was the place to be, and the artists came one after the other.
And they all came here too. Like an eagle's nest, the artists' village of Saint-Paul-de-Vence lies in the hinterland between Antibes and Nice. Paul Roux founded a small cafe here 100 years ago, it became a world-famous restaurant. Almost all the important artists of the last century have eaten here and inspired each other. In the Colombe d'Or, the Golden Dove, the restaurant is now run by the third generation by Paul Roux's grandson François and his wife Danielle. A real museum.
My grandfather also painted himself. During the war he met Matisse, then Picasso after the war. And he bought paintings. That's how it all came about. The artists often just left pictures behind, as a gift.
It's the unexciting that makes the Colombes so special. On the walls, pictures by Picasso, Braque and Miro, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. They have all been here, and they are followed by international celebrities until today.
I have photos of my grandfather with Tyrone Power or with Cary Grant. The stars came during the Cannes Festival or when they were on their way to Monaco. It wasn't long ago that we had lunch with the whole band of U2, and when they went out, there were already many waiting to see them. But it's not like that in here.
On the hill opposite, in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, is a unique park, created by the Marc family of art collectors.
My grandparents bought this property for their son, my uncle. He was very ill, he had leukemia. My grandparents lived in Cannes and bought this land here in the mountains so that my uncle could recover and breathe better. And when my uncle died of leukemia at the age of 12, they still had this beautiful garden.
Artist friends enliven the place with their works.
It was the artists Léger, Braque, Miro, Giacometti who said, "Make a place for us. It won't take away your pain, but think of us. We want a modern place for our modern art."
This is how the first private museum in France was created, with a unique collection, and thus a place that celebrates life and imagination, inspired by air and light.
What has the Côte d'Azur brought to artists? A certain light, a certain way of life. The colour of the flowers, the trees. Chagall painted the Bay of Nice. Picasso created ceramics in Vallerus, also thanks to my grandfather. I think it's a way of being. It's an art of living.
And connoisseurs of the art of living abounded on the Côte d'Azur. The well-heeled public liked to bask in the glow of the many creatives. Glamour, art and joie de vivre were part of the flair of the French Riviera. Everyone met each other, the beautiful, the rich, famous, and of course, film stars. And they were all drawn to Cannes. In 1946, a seaplane landed off the coast of the city. A clever PR coup by the American film industry. On board, the crème de la crème of Hollywood. the studios were sending their most beautiful ambassadors to the south of France to celebrate one event with a big star lineup. The starting signal for the first film festival in Cannes. Not far away was the Hôtel du Cap. It became a hostel for the top echelons of American cinema. Here, life was not only as free and casual as in sunny California. The south of France was also a good place to do business. The conquest of European cinema began. Reporter Henri-Jean Servat has known the festival for decades, in front of and behind the scenes.
In 1946, there was still this festival in Venice that was associated with fascism, with films by Hitler and Mussolini. And that's why the Cannes Festival was supposed to be on the side of liberal democracy. A film festival against fascist cinema, against the cinema of dictators. Everyone had the terrible war behind them. Everyone came and wanted to have a good time. It was the first big party in Europe, maybe even in the world.
The new festival was picking up speed quickly. Within a few years, Cannes was #1. Nowhere was the red carpet more attractive. Sophia Loren arrived with the film La Ciociara, for which she won the Oscar a little later. Her film partner, Jean-Paul Belmondo, thus launched his world career. Cary Grant returned to the setting of his film To Catch a Thief. Even opera diva Maria Callas was attracted to the stage of the Côte d'Azur. Those who were at the top came to Cannes. And for those who wanted to aim high, Romy Schneider became a celebrated star in France, alongside heartthrob Alain Delon, to great media effect. Cannes offered the very big stage. Even the goddess herself descended from Hollywood's Olympus, Liz Taylor.
When Elizabeth Taylor came to Cannes, it was the most beautiful performance I have ever seen. She came to do a show, not a film. The American stars were there to give the whole scene even more glamour, even more radiance. And so Cannes became the world capital of glamour.
Countless classics of film history celebrated their premiere here. Even star directors like Alfred Hitchcock presented their works personally and with the greatest possible PR. The Birds, a film that still sets standards today. Staging is everything in Cannes. And the show didn't end on the red carpet. More and more young actresses were giving their all on the beach. Each one courted for the attention of photographers and journalists.
It was the time when the bikini came into fashion in France. All the girls on the Croisette who wanted to catch a producer's eye were walking around in bikinis. It was the bikini era.
The beach at Cannes became a huge open-air studio for pin-ups, until one day a mishap happened.
She was a starlet, Simone Silva. She had, pardon the pun, big breasts. She had her picture taken with Robert Mitchum. The idea was to stand out. And then, intentionally or not, she lost her top. And when she was naked, Mitchum spontaneously put his big hands on Simone Silva's breasts to hide them from the cameras. It was a terrible scandal, and the unfortunate Simone Silva never worked again. Mitchum had to apologize. There was a boycott in the US. Don't go to Cannes again.
But the allure of the Côte d'Azur was stronger. The stars came anyway.
Soon, everything was back to normal. From Hollywood came the most fashionable women, like Joan Collins or Grace Kelly, very elegant, like wonderful Etruscan goddesses with the most extraordinary hairstyles.
Grace Kelly had just won an Oscar and was at the peak of her career. The trip to the Côte d'Azur changed her life forever and was the beginning of one of the great love stories of the century. The Principality of Monaco is a former pirate's nest, wrested from the narrow strip of land where the Western Alps meet the sea directly. The microstate is just 2 square kilometers in size, but it's one of the richest places in the world. Those who buy expensive property here no longer pay taxes, a paradise for those who want to keep to themselves. But the Principality has not always been so rich.
So in 1949, Régnier took over sort of a post-war Monaco. Europe was recovering. He was very young, he was 26 years old, and he needed to find money to get the country back on its feet.
Salvation came in the form of the rich Greek shipowner Aristotle Onassis. In the early 1950s, he began to invest in SBM, the company that ruled over real estate, luxury hotels, and the famous casino in Monaco.
Onassis really did have a master plan. I think that his idea for developing Monaco was very much to his profit. He started to buy shares of SBM through his Panama-based companies and ended up with 52% ownership of the company, which meant he had the rule of Monaco, even though Prince Régnier was the sovereign.
Onassis became the most powerful man in the small state, and he wanted to inexorably increase the value of his investment. On his luxury yacht, Christina O, he welcomed the most influential personalities of the time. The ship became one of the most exclusive meeting places on the Mediterranean coast.
It was an incredible yacht, and he added such detail. He had his bar, which people talk about now with the famous bar stools being made of whale foreskin, and he would often joke with his female guests that they were sitting on the world's largest penis, typical Onassis. But what he did create there was a place that he could bring John F. Kennedy and someone like Winston Churchill to meet for the first time together on his yacht. It was very controlled. He had all types of celebrities, anyone from Greta Garbo to Frank Sinatra. They were all part of this very elite, glamorous, and wealthy world.
Onassis pursued one goal. The Principality was to become a gold mine. And for this, he had the brilliant idea.
He realized that the only way Monaco was going to make money and become profitable was if Régnier married somebody that brought a little bit of glamour and wealth to this part of the world. He was very clever. And he decided that he was going to find the perfect spouse for Prince Régnier, but it had to be someone that brought, as I said, glamour and wealth to a very high scale and elite level.
Onassis chose 2 candidates. Only the greatest divas of Hollywood met his standards: Marilyn Monroe and Grace Kelly. Marilyn Monroe was discarded. Too poor and too wicked. Grace Kelly was perfect, beautiful, rich, scandal-free, and Catholic. Paris Match magazine set up the meeting with Prince Rainier. Onassis stayed in the background and hit the mark. Hollywood's noblest princess and prince got engaged. All of Monaco celebrated. A year later, an ocean liner was heading for the port. On board, the most elegant bride in the world. Always accompanied by whirring cameras. The Hollywood studio she was signed to was skillfully showcasing its biggest star for the last time. Grace Kelly's entry into Monaco was a triumph. The marriage of glamour and nobility became one of the biggest media events of the last century. 1,700 journalists came to the tiny principality. Until then, the state was almost completely unknown. Now, the whole world was watching this fairy tale wedding spellbound. "600 invited guests were present when the prince and the Hollywood actress married on the 18th of April, 1956 in St. Nicholas Cathedral. A few hours before the wedding, the bride had to sign a strict marriage contract. A fairy tale wedding that was dearly bought.
Grace Kelly actually paid a $2 million dowry at the time, which would be equivalent of $20 million today, which, when you look at it now, you think, is this a fairy tale wedding? Why did someone like Grace Kelly, with an Oscar and all her Hollywood friends, have to pay the money? As I understand it, it was to show that there was commitment on her part to the marriage. Obviously, they needed an influx of money in Monaco, and it wasn't just enough that she had her star power to bring with her. They wanted to know that she was serious and was going to be committed to the relationship.
Grace Kelly could be relied upon. She fulfilled her role perfectly. She managed to conquer the hearts of the Monegasques and to be represented in all the gazettes with her family and all over the world. The image boost for Monaco was huge, exactly according to Onassis' plan. But the string puller soon withdrew. He had lost a capital majority in the state through a clever move by Rainier. The big business in Monaco was now done by others. The Formula One circus gilded the streets of the mini-state, plus the casino and the real estate business. Within 30 years, Prince Rainier multiplied his country's turnover 20-fold. The state was more than rehabilitated. Today, Monaco is an oasis for the super-rich. The somewhat precarious past has long been forgotten. The former pirate's nest has become a retreat for moguls of all kinds. And in the casino, business is thriving ceaselessly. In the middle of the last century, outside Monaco, money did not yet play the decisive role, but freedom and liberality. Also at the Hôtel du Cap. The guests basked in the shadow of the famous, like Rock Hudson, who looked after beautiful women in pretense. In the 1950s and 60s, the French Riviera was a counterweight to the otherwise conservative mood of those years. Life was more open and carefree here. For Maya Oetker too, this was like a sigh of relief.
It was just this joy that the war was over.
dass der Krieg vorbei war. Es war richtig.
The clientele was the post-war generation, trying to reintroduce the old, beautiful feeling of life. After this contrast, this terrible war, this terrible post-war period. And then the joie de vivre blossomed again, and you could also say luxury.
At the Hotel du Cap, joie de vivre and luxury were the same thing. On the beaches of the coast, there was less luxury, but enjoyment and ease. In the very west of the Côte d'Azur lies a former fishing village, Saint-Tropez. While glamour and elegance reign on the beaches of Cannes or Monaco, the creative and the bohemian were conquering this place for themselves. Hard to imagine, but in the 1950s, hardly anyone came here to swim. The beaches were full of flotsam. Patrice de Colmont runs a bar on the beach at Pampelonne. Not just any bar. It is the beach bar par excellence. His father had bought a small piece of land in this once completely remote area.
My mother was furious. We had little money and he just bought a plot of land. But my father was a visionary. He said to us, "This will be our promised land."
Patrice's father was to be proved right. To this day, this improvised-looking place is one of the hippest beach clubs in the world, named after the year it was built, the Club 55, Le Club 55. At that time, the Colmont family wanted to spend the summer casually by the sea. But then a sheer natural event threw their plans off course.
One day a jeep drove up here. The driver saw our huts and our tables, which were like these, and thought it was a restaurant. He told us that he was going to shoot a film here with 80 people and asked, "Can you cook for everyone?" And my mother, who is not afraid of anything, said, "Yes, of course."
It was not just any film crew. It was the director Roger Vadim with his wife, the very young Brigitte Bardot.
She was the most beautiful woman in the world, no question about it. She was a completely new phenomenon. Before, the stars were very sophisticated, always heavily made up, hung with jewelry. They wore magnificent dresses. Brigitte was minimalist. She walked around barefoot, wore a dress made only of one piece of fabric. She was like a firework, but without artificial tricks.
Elle explosait sans artifice.
I think that was a very, very new phenomenon.
Everyone fancied Brigitte Bardot. No one was quite like her. The actress was considered a femme fatale. And because she lived in Saint-Tropez, her reputation defined the whole town.
She was considered a scandalous actress because she took her clothes off. Saint-Tropez was considered the forecourt of hell, a place of debauchery, a place of sex. When Brigitte came here to shoot, the whole world came. The fans, the paparazzi. Brigitte Bardot, a child of the city, brought enormous fame to Saint-Tropez.
The Colmont summer oasis became a beach club for stars and those who wanted to be close to them. And the former fishing village of Saint-Tropez became the epitome of unbridled joie de vivre. And where that was at home, he was also drawn to it. The German multimillionaire and playboy Günter Sachs. The bon vivant met the most desirable woman in the world.
Günther was like a hero from a novel. He was very elegant. He was very rich, so he could make a lot of things happen. Brigitte was like a beautiful wild animal, an independent woman. But she was tired of all this success. I think Günther was the man she needed at that time to protect her. One who took care of everything.
The two became the European glamour couple. They stood for a lifestyle that continues to set standards today. They married in Las Vegas and honeymooned in Tahiti. A breathless passion in the most exciting places in the world. A carefree life around the globe, the birth of the international jet set. Brigitte Bardot was free, light-footed, impulsive and self-confident. A whole new type of woman. Wherever she and Günter Sachs appeared, they were surrounded. It was the price of their celebrity. A life that Brigitte Bardot didn't want. Soon, she retired.
She was used to doing her own shopping, but from one day to the next, she could no longer leave her house. She was like locked up. Brigitte Bardot was now one of the biggest stars in the world. She was one of the most photographed women, with Marilyn Monroe, Lady Di and Jackie Kennedy. Everyone wanted to see Brigitte. She changed the destiny of Saint-Tropez.
Now the next jet set was also coming. Rock stars like Mick Jagger, who married the model Bianca here, not quite sober, in May 1971. Saint-Tropez became a fairground for all those who wanted to live it up and find their El Dorado here.
It was the moment when the whole world changed. Morality shifted. People wanted to stroll. People wanted to be naked, to swim, to make love in peace. All that was here.
Those were the golden times on the Côte d'Azur. A time when everything was possible. Every day was a celebration of life. The Hôtel du Cap is one of the places where the history of the Côte d'Azur continues to be written, and where the glamorous times of this coast still live on.
In the 1960s and 70s, there was a huge parade of great evening dresses in the evening, and people dressed up. That was a joy. It was really very elegant. Today, it's a bit different. Sometimes not. Well, these stairs, you have to go down them properly. You have to hold on tight properly.
This staircase stands for the very grand entrance when the who's who of the international glamour world gathers in the hotel's park. The Amphar fundraising gala is one of the most prestigious gatherings of high society in the world these days. You won't find more stars and big names anywhere. What counts is to see and be seen. The Murphys' exuberant beach parties are long gone, just like the scandal about the Windsors. The spirit of those times still hovers over the coast, even if many once glamorous villas have long since become sinfully expensive apartment buildings. Today, super-rich prefer to enjoy their luxury alone, but the myth of the French Riviera is unbroken.
The spirit of the Côte d'Azur lives on. It's a spirit of freedom, carefreeness, youth, the sweet life, a little sex, a little sun, a little of everything. It is an exceptional cocktail. The recipe is secret, otherwise the Côte d'Azur could be multiplied at will. It's Queen Victoria riding in a carriage through the streets of Cannes. It's Brigitte Bardot in a swimming costume on the beach. It is this unique mixture that only exists here.
These stories feed the myth of this coast. The Côte d'Azur remains a promise of love, luxury, and passion.